National Association of CXGX Users Steering Committee, and my current responsibility on the committee is coordinating the NACU webinar educational offerings. For those of you who may not be familiar, the National Association of CXGX Users, or commonly referred to as NACU, has a long history of helping members get the most out of their GenSabar software. The NACU organization serves as a sounding board for GenSabar proposed changes to the CXGX product lines, as well as a conduit for user concerns. Webinar topics are often selected as a direct result of NACU member suggestions. So if you have a suggestion for a future webinar topic, or would be interested in presenting a topic in one of our future webinars, please feel free to submit a webinar request form by visiting mygensabar.net website under the User Groups tab. Click on the NACU logo, then click on Webinar Request Form. If you're interested in becoming a member of NACU, please visit our webpage on mygensabar.net under the User Groups tab. Click on the NACU logo, then click on Join NACU. Our presenter for today's webinar, titled Bursting the Paper Chain, Electronic Letters from Cognos, is James Mueller. James is Senior Systems Analyst at Graceland University. James has been their Cognos Administrator for 5 years, presented over a dozen presentations at JAM, mostly on the topic of Cognos, and was the CX Institutional Intelligence Track Coordinator this past year, and will be the CX Information Technology Track Coordinator for this upcoming year. Thank you, James, for your many contributions. James, if you're ready, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Tony. Charles, for those of you who have not had a chance to play with some of the presentation I'm going over, I want to talk a little bit about where this came from. Twice now at JAM, Peggy Mothershed, who is one of our registrars employees, has done a great presentation on bursting the paper chain, and she's provided both of those out there. I've got the link here that you can go to it. As you can see, it is a long, well done presentation that'll cover a lot of what I'm going to go over. She's given pretty in-depth instructions on what to do. I'm going to kind of talk about it more from the bigger viewpoint of things, how IT kind of viewed this and why we chose to do these, and then also go into actually how to set up a couple letters. So moving on, there were a couple problems that we wanted to solve as an institution when it came to communicating with our students, our staff, our faculty, our prospects, pretty much anybody that we could think about. And problem number one was that students tended to ignore notices in their mailboxes. This was very important to Peggy. She would spend a lot of time producing manual pieces of paper that would give them, hey, you need to go register. Did you know that your midterm grades are coming up? Things like that. And finally, after doing this for years, she spent some time outside their mailboxes watching them. And she noticed that students would open up the mailbox, maybe not even glance at what she had produced, and throw it in the trash immediately. So from her viewpoint, that was wasted effort on her part, the hours that had gone into it, the communication didn't get to the student, and they wanted a way to try to at least get it to the student's inbox so they weren't producing the paper, we weren't paying for that, they weren't doing the time, and maybe the students would be looking at it more often. And then we had done stuff inside of CX. The IT office had scripts that were going out and sending out emails, but they were basically rudimentary information. They were lists. Mostly we used those for audits, but they had a major downside. IT was the one who was doing this. We were creating them, we were maintaining them. It wasn't in the end user's hands. And so we made a solution years ago that was a homegrown HTML template system that we have, and we still use it. It's one of many of our tools. It was great in that end users could learn HTML and they could then modify the template. However, the downside it had was it was very limited in the amount of data that it could retrieve. It was based on the programming that we then in IT would do to expose certain details, and there were still limitations within what it could do even formatting-wise. And then last, kind of important probably for a lot of you, was we didn't have a budget to do anything with a third-party system. There's lots of options out there to do email communications. We just didn't have money to buy any of them. So we wanted to do something with a tool we already had. And that's where we got Cognos Business Intelligence to do the work. It kind of was a super tool for us to be able to do all of these things. And so I'm going to show you some of what we have done. For students, we're sending out notifications to them. You can see here, for example, that this student is getting a registration reminder. Hey, you didn't register for classes. We want you to come do that. That's something that Peggy was very specifically doing and had issues with them not doing, responding well. And already you can see that there is some ability to then do customization. Here we have a name that is being populated in. We have things like the fall and the year being populated in. Let me zoom back in so you can see that again. The highlighter doesn't work in the zoomed in mode. So there is ability to start doing that customization. Some people might be used to what you do in Word for doing word merges for this. Then we also wanted to do stuff for advisors. So here we have an email that our advisors get that talks about students that are registering in courses with them. And you can see it gets a little bit more fancy. We've added our logo here. We've gone ahead and added in a list frame down here that has more information that then they can look at. And then also, we wanted to send stuff to other people, people like our coaches. Coaches would have a vested interest in students, making sure they're getting registered. We might have other people, staff, teachers who needed to get information about these. And then from there, we kind of went a little bit further. We produced charts inside of our emails. So that way we can leverage the power of the Cognos BI environment using all of the tools it has, including all of the HTML layout options that you can do with it. This report, for example, is one that the students responded really well to. The gauge report that shows a student how close they may or may not be during the mid-session to the academic dismissal level. So it helps them know, hey, I need to get myself in gear, or I'm doing all right. And then you can also do a lot with this. There are some really advanced layout capabilities in Cognos that allow you to create emails that are pretty much professional level. You don't have to, but it is really capable in terms of being used to produce emails. This is an email that we send out to students whenever they get verified to let them know that they've been selected for verification from financial aid and that they have steps that they need to do and who to contact. And a lot of it is variable in. Their name is coming in, the year that they're being picked is choosing what document they're being linked to, who their advisor is being picked from the database. And these were all options that weren't available within our homegrown system. Basically, what we found with Cognos is if you can make it a list report, you can pull in all the people you're looking for, you can pull in the information you're looking for, you can turn it into an email address, an email that you then send to them. It's just some things you're going to need. So what are you going to need to do this? First, you have to have access to Report Studio. If you are not a Report Studio author, I'm sorry, but only they are allowed in the Cognos email making club today. So you need that tool to be able to go ahead and start doing this. Now, you don't need to be accessing that tool to send the emails, but the person creating them does have to use Report Studio. Query Studio can't do this, and neither can Analysis or some of the other studios. There is, I'm just going to mention it now, There is some capability to do this sort of stuff in Event Studio. There were 2 awesome presentations this year at JAM. If you were able to attend them, great. If not, I believe they are up on the JAM webpage off of my Genzabar under the Events tab for JAM for 2015. Go ahead and go look at those. They talk about Event Studio as another option for doing this sort of stuff. And then second, you're going to need a list report to convert. You don't have to have this in the long run. As you become more adept at this, as you're more used to it, you can start with just the query and go from there. But usually when you're getting going, having a list report really helps you know, I've got the people I'm looking for, what can I do next? And then finally, number 3, you need a way to get an email address in your report for your recipient. Now, for most people, this is going to be easy. You can go out to AAREC, select only the address type that you're looking for that are active and not ended, but that depends on your setup at your school, how things are implemented, and the honesty is you can't send an email to somebody if you don't have an email address to send it to it. You'll notice possibly in mine how we do it. We have stored procedures that allow us to go out and get the variable email, so if they don't have a personal one, we're getting their school one, we're checking to make sure it's formatted somewhat correctly to go to people, and that's something the IT office can work on, but for most people out of the box, the Cognos package delivered by Genzabar, you can do this sort of stuff. And then you're going to need a little bit of basic layout skills. You aren't going to have a design degree. You're not going to have to be a graphic design student. For me, that was part of my background in history. It wasn't in IT, computer science. It was in graphic design and studio art. So I had those school tools, and I found Cognos to really be an awesome design tool. But as you saw some from the examples before, some of them aren't the greatest of layouts, but they do what they need to do. It's an email. All right, so going on to Report Studio, there's going to be 2 features in Report Studio that you will be using to do this process. The first feature we're going to look at is a page set. Kind of think about this like the page break. You need to know what email is going to go to what person. And so this creates those separate pages, 1 email per person to then get. You'll do this the same way if you're going to do letters from Cognos. For example, we produce a lot of our admissions letters through Cognos, and page sets do this. They break the pages by person, by recipient, by whatever we need it to break down to. And then second, you need to set your burst options. This is who is going to get the output. This allows you to do the recipient setup. Now, there's a couple things I want to warn you about on this. It is very easy to set the burst options incorrectly. Almost everybody at our institution, the first time they were going through training on this, the first time we were testing it a couple years ago, set it up incorrectly, and it is a potential for major disaster if you do, because if you aren't setting this up, you may be sending information to the wrong person. I've heard about on news how there's been news articles about some school sent out a list of who was dismissed and they sent it to the wrong people. Well, this in the Cognos realm is where that mistake could happen. It's easy to send your budget account information to the wrong recipient. So you'll want to be careful when you're setting these up. All right, so at this point, I'm going to take just a moment and see if there are any questions before I go on into the demo portion of this presentation. Charles, do we have anything?
Yes, we have one that just came in. It reads, can the author create and save the report, then consumers run and burst the email?
Yes, that is something we are doing. Our authors are creating reports. They are not often the person who is sending it. Now, the author is the only one who can do changes to the content, so even after they've created it, if there's a need to change the verbiage in paragraphs or to change fonts to match a certain style change that maybe your marketing office has decided on, that's up to the author to go ahead and make those changes. And that brings up a good thing I want to point out. There is a downside to this, which is why one of the great reasons we still use our homegrown system. When Cognos sends the email, it sends it from the person who had scheduled the report to run. So if Steve logs into our system and Steve runs the report and bursts it, all the people who get it are going to get it from Steve. They aren't going to get it from the author. They aren't going to get it from somebody else. There is no way to override that and still have people have the ability to email from their own addresses. So what we have done is we have created fake users like registrar, financial aid, admissions, and given them login capability into Cognos, and that user goes and schedules the reports to run. So that way when our emails come out from the registrar's office, they come from registrar. And so that is an additional step if you don't want to have up at the top, oh, this is from registrar, but the person sending it might actually be Peggy. Any other questions at this point, Charles?
No further questions at this time. Actually, wait a minute. One just came in. It reads, did you say you need Report Studio access to modify the template/text? If so, how many Report Studio licenses do you have?
Yes. Once you've created this, there is, well, yes, with a caveat. I'll get to the caveat. Yes, you have to have a Report Studio license to change it from then on. It's a report. So whoever is doing it will have to continue to do it, or if your IT office sets it up, then somebody in your office can maintain it from then forward. We have here at Graceland 2 admin licenses for our IT staff, me and then the backup, which is kind of flip-flopped. I guess he's primary admin soon and I'm the backup. And then we also have our power users in all of our key offices have Report Studio. I think in grand total, I want to say we have about 12 to 15 author licenses that are currently in use.
Great.
Now,
Thanks,
the caveat I do want to say is Cognos is a powerful tool. You can create prompts on your report, and somebody can type into that prompt variable text that then goes into the placeholder on the report. So that there's things that they need to change regularly, such as the name of an event, and that's not stored in the database, you can have them type in a prompt that then whatever they type in will go on the report. And so that is the one place where they don't have to have a license to do that. You just have to set the report up. Any other questions, Charles?
That's it for now.
All right, so now I want to start. There's going to be 2 demo portions to this. The first part is how to create an email. And so we're going to get started on that portion. And I'm going to start with my Cognos environment. So hopefully this is appearing nicely to everybody. Here's Cognos connection. This is likely what most of you are used to seeing when you log in. This is 10.2.1 for those who are interested in version numbers. And I have a report here that I'm going to click on and run. And it's a simple list report I've created. It provides me a list of people who have, right now we're very interested in our printing system, PaperCut. So this is showing me accounts that people have, and then who's the function responsible for that account number, and what people can print to that account. We want to make sure that we're having those set up right, since PaperCut doesn't really talk with CX. So we have somebody has to manually keep these things up to date, and as most of you probably know, things tend to get out of date very quickly across the board. And so this is one of those lists. I could take this list, I could manually merge it through Word and then have it output through my Outlook email. I could do a lot of stuff with this. It's not mostly in CX, so I can't use a CX script to do anything. So I want to do something with this in Cognos. So here's the same report, just in Report Studio now. And as you can see, I've got the account name, my function primary name, my email, and my full name, and the email of the person. And this primary email is the function person that I want this report to go to. So I'm going to want it to burst to the function's primary email address. I'm going to want to group on that person per account. So if they have 3 accounts, for this case, I want them to get 3 different emails, 1 per account. There's nothing to stop you from having 1 per person with multiple accounts listed. We do that all the time. This is just a simple example I want to use. And so many times when I'm converting a list report to an email for somebody, I get something like this, something that says, hey, this is what I send, and I want you to turn this into a Cognos email. And one thing to be aware of with Cognos, it is not a word processor. There's a lot of stuff it can't do easily. I like to have stuff in Word so I can do, say, for example, check my spelling, make sure all of that's taken care of, get an idea of the layout. It takes a little bit of work to convert, and that's what we're going to go through here. So I'm going to create a new page for now. I could just start with this page, but I want to have a new page. I'm going to put it on my pages. And so now I've got a blank page. And as you can see here in Word, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I kind of count the signature all as one, 6 blocks of information that I need to then get into Cognos. Who's it going to? A block of text, the list of stuff that I want them to get, another block of text, a thank you, and a signature line. So I count those out to myself because I'm going to go into Cognos and I'm going to drag a table in. And so I want 1 column-wide table, and I'm going to want 6 rows. While in Word, you can easily do paragraphs and stuff like that. That's not how Cognos works. It creates HTML, but it's really good at creating only certain types of HTML. And here, rather than code it all in the hard-coded HTML, putting in my paragraph, putting in my break tags, I'm going to use a table to do layout. So on my table, this is my first right here. I'm going to go up now that I've set up this page, and I'm going to go to the page properties. So if you see here, this is the page properties. You can get to it by clicking on the page, or if you are already in the page, you can ancestor up to the page. Either way, both places, I want to assign this to my query. And that's this query right here. So that way, items in that query, I can drag on the page and not get that weird little warning about getting singletons created. I don't want singletons. I want the data from there to be here. And so I'm going to go in on my page, and now I can access this query, my final list. It's a joined query. And I'm going to put up here the person's full name. And that's the primary name. So that's the person who's getting the email. And that matches now this section right here on the mailing name. So now I'm going to go in, and notice here I have this merge field in the middle of something. Anytime this happens, you have to treat these as separate blocks. So first I'm going to grab everything up to that, and I'm just going to copy it. And then I'm going to come back over to Cognos, and I'm going to paste that right there. And so now I've got that portion. Then I'm going to go in, and I'm going to grab that merged piece, the account name, and I'm going to bring it in next to there. And I'm going to bold it because my example has it bolded. And then here, I'm going to grab everything after that, and I'm going to paste it at the end of that. So now I've created that paragraph. If, for example, we wanted to highlight the word, make the word Graceland italicized, I would actually have to break this off into a whole new text item, paste it back in, break off the piece at the end. This is what you're going to have to do if somebody does a lot of formatting on a report. Thank them for being so nice to you. Cut it off, paste it back in, and now I can click on Graceland because it's a separate item, and I can apply italics to it. That is different than Word. You can't just pick one word at a time to apply formatting to. You actually have to make individual text items for it. Now, I'm just going to drag in here my list. So I've now created this list to match this. Except for all I really want off of that is their information on who. I don't really need their email. I just want that full name. And let's say, hey, they wanted it to be in a nice, pretty blue color, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to add my teal. Now, I have this second half of the paragraph, and again, I noticed that this is a hyperlink that I probably want to actually be a hyperlink. So I'm going to copy this text here, paste it in here, and then I'm going to go to my toolbox, and I'm going to add a hyperlink. I'm going to add it at the end. It's a little bit, make sure you get in the right place. And then there's two properties here that I want to set. First, I want to set what does it show when somebody clicks on, is looking at it. That's this property right here. And I'm putting my email address in here. And yes, this could be a variable email address from the database. It doesn't have to be a hard-coded one. And then the URL source for hyperlinks that I want to be addresses are a mail to : and then where it's supposed to mail to, so mail to graceland.edu. And while I'm at it, I notice I misspelled Graceland because, again, it's not a word processor. It's not going to let me know this sort of stuff. I need to make sure I go fix it myself. And so now I've got that, and here I'm going to copy this last little piece and paste it in at the end. So my next section is this thank you. I'm going to copy it, paste it in, and then in effort of time, I'm not going to do all the formatting to make it look like how exactly our marketing department wants our signatures to look. I am going to drag another paragraph in because I like to put, table in. I like to keep the address blocks as a single table. And so one column, and again, I have my name, address line 1, 2, and 3, so that is 4 total rows. And unlike before, I'm not going to maximize the width. That's just personal preference. You could. I'm going to come in and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste that. And then here I would do the exact same thing. In this case, I'm going to just take this hyperlink I've already created, take it, and paste it here. I'm not going to change it to our alias name. It's the same address in the end. And I'm going to take this phone number and put it here. So now I've got a very rudimentary layout. One thing is I drug a list cell into this report. At the moment, there's no linkage between the two. I need to go in and set the master detail relationships. And so for those of you who have done joins before, this is going to be a very familiar environment. I'm going to create a new link, and that link is the account ID to the account ID. So that way I get only the people that match that account. So I'm going to hit OK. And so now I've got pretty much the layout of my report. I'm going to hit play so that way I can see how it would look. And if you see here, Paul Davis is going to get his Grabski library, and it lists the people who can print to it. If I page down, it's going to be the next stuff down. But it's weird. Wait a minute. Why is it only one? Shouldn't there be more? Shouldn't there be a page per person? And this is where I'm talking about that page set. So I'm going to go up and go back to my pages. And in the toolbox here on the left-hand side, there's the page set. I'm going to drag that to the top, and I need to assign a page set a query. So I'm going to assign it the same exact query that I was using to run the report in the first place. And I'm going to set its grouping and sorting. I want it to group on the account ID, and I'm going to go ahead and have it sort on the account name. So that way they're in order. And I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see I've got this showing me the grouping that I did and this detail pages folder. This is where I want to take my email page and drag it into the detail pages. Now when I run this, I'm going to first get a page for Paul for the Grabski library. And then when I page down, I get another page. I get a page for the information technology. And again, for every one of these that exists, I'm going to get another page. And then finally, of course, because I still have that list on there, I will get that overall list. And let me go ahead and run this again just to show you. As you can see out of the box, just how I've done it, this isn't very nice looking. It doesn't match how Word did it. To do that sort of stuff, I'm going to want to go into into Cognos, and I'm going to select all those cells, and I'm going to apply a little bit of padding. There's margin and padding. I recommend you stick to one of them, and padding seems to just be, for me, the easier one of the two to pick. So I know from a little bit of design history that a good spacing is 1 EM. So I'm going to change this to 1 EM on the bottom, 0 all the way around, and hit OK. And now my paragraph starts formatting a little bit. Now it looks like there's paragraph breaks between stuff. And here I wanted to apply a little bit of an indentation that you can see in my Word document. So on the left, I'm going to add about 2 EM worth of spacing over here and hit OK. And now that indents. And maybe I do want this to take up the whole space. So I'm going to go to this table properties, size and overflow, and I'm going to say that the width is 100%. And then I want to make sure it actually has the indentation on the other side too. So I'm going to come in here and put a right padding on it of 2 EM. So now when I run this, it's starting to look a little bit more like an email on what I would expect to see. This is pretty much what your people are going to see when they receive it. That may be different depending on if they're looking at a mobile device, if they're looking at Outlook. Outlook uses a stripped down HTML render, so a lot of stuff that may look one way will look differently in Outlook. I recommend if you test how stuff is going to look more in a web-based email client rather than Outlook, because it'll give you a better idea of how people are really going to see it more often than not. Unless, of course, it's an internal one, which is going just to Outlook most likely. And I can do stuff here. I've got all sorts of control over fonts, so I could come in here and say I want it to be Georgia, I want it to be 9-point, I want the font to be navy, so it starts matching my styling over here. This is where you can do a lot of control, change paragraph, layouts, do that sort of stuff. And if you do a lot of it, you'll get really quick and used to what you want to do, even maybe set up a template for yourself. So that's the first part. That is getting the email set up. If you're creating a letter, this is all you really have to do. Now I need to set up the bursting. And I do that, I'm going to first save my report. And just because I know I don't want it, I'm going to go back to my report pages, and now I'm going to delete my list. I don't need it anymore to compare output twos. It's done its job. So I'm going to go back to my page, and I'm going to then go over to File, and there's a burst options setting. And that's what I'm going to click over here. And what that shows by default is nothing because it hasn't been set up. I'm going to make this report available for bursting because I'm using one query for my page. I'm using one query for the inner list. I'm using the same query for my page set. I'm going to use the same query here. My burst scripts match what my page set matching was. So here it is, that query. And I'm going to pick a label. This is what we'll see what the label does later. This is when you're in the Cognos environment and you're looking at outputs. What does it show on the outputs? I like to usually have my label be what matched the key of that breakdown. So when I was doing all those groupings, if I have 3 items in the group, I'll go create an item in my query that's all 3 items concatenated together. So in this case, I'm just going to put down the account name as the label. And then I'm going to set my groups, and all it is account ID. That matches exactly before, and just because I did this sorting on it before, this matches exactly how I set up my page set. Now I'm going to go, well, who gets it? It's going to be the same exact query, and the data item is who is the recipient. In this case, it's the primary email. So that is the email. I don't want to pick this other email. That's the person who's doing the printing. I don't want to send them this information. I want to send it to the primary email. It matches my grouping over here, so I know there's only one function primary email per account ID. And then I'm going to go ahead and say that that's an email address. And I don't have to set the master detail relationships because my burst recipient query and my burst groups query are the same exact query. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to save my report, and I am done on this portion of it. This is how you create an email in Cognos to be ready for them bursting. And so at this point, I'd like to, Charles, are there any questions? Because I want to cover that before we go to the next part.
Okay, no questions right now. We'll give about 10, 15 seconds to see if any come in.
Okay.
James, I think we're in the clear for now.
Okay, well, we'll go on to the next step. So this is the part that the Report Studio author has to do. They have to be involved in this step. They might be the person who's doing all of the work from here on out as well. So now I'm going to go back to my environment. I'm going to hit F5 to just refresh this so I get the most recent copy of this report. Here's that exact same report. And now there is a thing that we like to call testing the burst, and that makes it so you see what the output will look like. You can verify you're doing what you wanted to do, but no emails go out. And so if you made a mistake, nobody is going to get output. So here I'm going to do the run with options. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to pick my format, which is HTML. I'm going to, over here, say save the report. Note I am not saying send me the report by email. So I've said save the report, and then up at the right, it's a little hard to see because until you hover over it, you can't see it. The link is a use advanced options. So I'm going to click here. And many of you have probably seen this screen. Again, I wanted a format of HTML. I'm going to up my rows per page to 1,000. And then I'm going to come over here to the delivery, and I'm going to check the box. Send the report by email. No, I'm not. I'm just testing. That would be a big mistake to do. So don't do that. Instead, you want to check the box bursting. That's down here at the bottom. Underneath the options is the bursting setting. So I've set burst the report. And as you can see, there are some other options. You pretty much never change these. And again, only on the delivery is save checked. No other box is checked. I did not check to send the report by email. HTML, burst the report. There's no prompts, but I'm going to tell it to go ahead and prompt for values. And then I wait. If I want to know if it's doing anything, I can launch my activities and schedules. Sometimes reports take a little longer to run, so you need to check to see. I see nothing's active. I go look at my past activities, and it's succeeded. I can see that here. So I'm going to now return to the environment, and something new has appeared, and that's right here. That's this pages to indicate that there was output. So I'm going to click on this output to view the output versions. And here you can see my version is June 11th at 2015 at 2:40. That's the one I just ran. And here is all of the output that it would have created, that it did create. It just saved it. So now I could click on where it says HTML, and I can check to make sure that 10-whatever in technology services really pulled up the list like I wanted it to. Is this matching what I expected it to be for that? So I'm going, yes, that is the account number. It's all the information looks right. I don't catch any errors that I made. I now know for sure that that person, Jim Collins, is the person who should be getting that. I double-checked that against my report. I know I have set my burst up correctly. If there was a mistake, I would go back, go in there, change it, come back here and test it again. So now that I've known it's worked, I've done a burst test. Now I really want to send this. The good news is the two people who are going to get this email are expecting it. So in this case, nobody's going to be surprised that something happened. So this is a little bit different. So before I picked Save the Report, here I'm going to click Send Me the Report by Email. It's a misnomer. It's not going to go to me. because I'm going to go into the advanced options again, and I'm going to keep it on HTML. I'm just going to pick 1,000 page rows again. And then here, I'm going to, again, check the bursting. And so I know the bursting is now turned on. I'm going to go ahead on the delivery and click Save. You don't have to, but if you ever want to see a history of what you sent, this is a good way to do it. For some of our emails that we send to students, we keep 360 days of history. Do be aware that storage on your SQL Server box that is running the Cognos content, that may be storage that you're not wanting to use up. So just that's a choice that you will have to work with your IT department to make sure they're okay with you changing that. By default, it only saves the last 5 runs. So, and then you can see send the report by email. This would go to me right now if I didn't do anything. No, because I checked the burst. So even though it says it's sending the report by email to me, it's not really doing that. So I'm going to go in and edit the options. And here, this is the subject is what it's going to appear in their mailbox. Unlike Event Studio, which allows you to give subjects that have variable information in it, this method of doing it requires that the subjects not be variable. It's a static check. So I'm going to say users who can print to one of your functions, And I'm going to say accounts in this case to match a little bit. And then down here, I am not choosing include a link to the report. I am choosing attach the report. Depending on when you come in, these may be reversed. The reason I'm doing that is by leaving the body blank and clicking only attach the report, the output version that you guys saw earlier will be exactly what they get in their email inbox. Up here it tells you kind of that if you, for reports produced in HTML, when you want to include the report as the body of the message, leave the box empty, and under attachment, select only include the report. They didn't used to tell you that. That's something that they finally added verbiage on. So I'm going to hit OK. And so again, save, send the report by email. Notice that my name has now dropped off, burst the report, and my HTML, and I'm going to click Run. And so at this point, Cognos is firing out emails. I can see that by going into my activities and schedules. And you see now, unlike before, it didn't run almost as immediately as it was before. It took a little bit of getting out of my current activities. If I go to my past activities, it succeeded. If I view my run history details on my first job, you can see here under the messages that there are no messages. There shouldn't be any messages when you do a burst test. And the report outputs say no. Now when I go to this one and I go to view run history details, I see that there were messages. It's pretty much for every email you're going to see 2 messages. That there's a message waiting to be sent and it sent it. There's a message waiting to be sent and it sent it. So I can quickly divide this number of entries by 2 to know that I sent out 9 email outs. There wasn't any errors. And here it does say, yes, indeed, there was report outputs. I'm going to close this. I'm going to return back to my environment, and I'm going to go click on this report output versions again. And here it's only keeping the most recent version. So that's how this report has been set up. Only keep the most recent. Don't keep history. And I can click on one of these and see exactly what got sent to the person. Now, I'm not Paul Davis, so I didn't get this. He got it. I'd have to check with him to see how it looked. And so sometimes you'll want to fake the burst email address. And to do that, I can go into the report, and I can go into my query where the email address exists, and I could just remove what's there and put in single quotes in my own email address. And so that way I get all of the emails, and I can check to make sure how it looks, how did it appear in my email box, without having to go track down somebody to do that final checking of layout. That's how you burst a report and how you didn't do a test on that burst. Always, always test a burst before you send it, especially when you're initially setting it up. And also something we ran into is be aware that those burst options, they stick around with the report. So if you copy that report and go use it to do something else and forgot that it's set to burst to people, that burst option will be there, and somebody might later on run the report and see the burst option and check it, and suddenly you have a report that you didn't expect going out to be being burst. So always be aware of checking to see if the report that you're modifying already has burst options set up, and probably removing them if they don't need to be there. All right, are there any questions, Charles?
No more at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to just do a little bit of an example, show a little bit of what we do. So here, for example, this is a folder that is showing all of the processes that are coming out from Cognos. These are scheduled to run, as you can see from their timestamps that show their modified dates. At about 10 o'clock at night, we start sending out these emails to students and prospects. It's about verification process and where they are. So you can see over here, I can look at past history, and it will show me information like, so I know that this went to this email address, and I can pull. Here you can see a history of the reports being ran. As you can tell, there was a date that it didn't have outputs for a long period of time. I didn't catch that there was an error in the report, and so it wasn't going out. And I can actually click on the HTML, and you can see exactly what this person would have received and the information that they got. And so that's for financial aid. Here's one that's being done for registrar. Again, I can click on the outputs and then see what one of those was being sent to somebody. And here's one with multiple information being done, that they had some changes processed for their advisees. So this is going out to advisors to let them know what advisees made changes and how the change was made. So this student was registered into a course. It was done by another employee, so it wasn't done by the advisor. And so they get a list of the people who made those changes. You can see we've added images, we've added other stuff. And then also in this same area, there's a registration change. This is what the students see when they make changes to their registration. Every day they get a summary of those changes. And here you can see that these were all the changes processed. That person didn't end up with any, so let me go to this one. So here the student will get a list of all of the changes that occurred to their registration and broken down by who did it and what the change was. Hey, I was registered, I was dropped. And then at the end of it, we also give them their current schedule, so that way they see that output. So these are two different lists doing two wildly different queries, and they're all joined back through those master detail relationships to the student. And so there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. And of course, we tell them to go look at JICS at any time to see their current schedule. We're sending emails to faculty about changes. We're sending them reminders to do their grades. We're sending out notifications to people for FAFSA verifications. A couple of years ago at JAM, I submitted a NACU software contest entry. So if you're part of NACU, you can go look at that. That allowed Cognos to send out emails to people for the announcements from JICS. So if you have announcements and you wanted people to get a digest of them, there is out there, I think it's from 2012, an entry, software contest entry that gives you how to get those emails into their email box. And so Cognos every day sends out to all of our staff, all of our students, the announcement digest of what announcements got sent to them, so maybe they'll pay attention to them. That's a lot of why we do this. Is probably like most areas, we struggle with how to communicate with everybody in a way that they're going to listen to. By doing this, we can at least do something automated to make our lives easier. So the most important thing I want to, again, talk about is don't be on the news. I don't want to hear about how any of you sent out grade notifications to the wrong students. Burst safely. Always test your burst first. And then Peggy's documentation, she goes over again exactly those steps that I showed you to do the test to make sure that you aren't losing your job because of a major FERPA violation. Any questions?
No questions, James. We actually got a few comments. People love this. Thank you. Very useful. And someone asked if you're for hire because this was great.
I already told my boss that I'm going to not be going anywhere for the foreseeable future, so he doesn't have to get upset with me.
And just so everyone can look in their chat window, I sent the link for the NACU webinar page on My Genzabar. We will have this recording along with the slide deck, I'd say, up by end of day tomorrow, at the latest end of day Monday. And let's just give them another few seconds here to see if any more questions come in. Okay, James, I think we are all set, so I'll let you close it out if you have anything left.
Nope, I think I've covered what I wanted to show. Again, just to remind you, Peggy did great presentations, and so feel free. Let me pull that up. They're out on My Genzabar for the JAM 2012 and 2014. And also, I've provided a direct link on our Cognos environment, which is out. It's a public folder, so you can go out and get her 2014 presentation. And it's got more information, also goes over some of what I've showed. We still use this, so when people in my school say, hey, I need to set up a burst, how do I do that? We tell them, refer to Peggy's presentation. It's got great information.
Great. Well, James, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your time today. And Tony, thank you. I got a comment here saying we couldn't see where the link that I sent out, some people didn't get that. So let me just walk people through that. If you log on to mygenzabar.net, once you're logged in, click User Groups. From there, click the NACU logo. And on the left side of that page, you're going to see a column. And you're going to look for NACU Presents Webinars, and that's where we will be posting this recording. You can also look at past webinars as well. So thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. If there's any other comments, feel free to post that in the survey that pops up afterwards.